Rawbush here. Had some minor difficulties yesterday. Went to install the rotor on the shaft that I was on the lathe, and at first I had taken off just a hair too much. I tried knurling it a little and didn't make up for it, so I took a little more off, or length, trying to make up for it, and you can't even really feel this difference. And I did want a tight fit, but I went to hammer this bad boy on with a pipe here, and smacked it a couple times, and the epoxy just cracked. And able to pull these two off of it. Actually, these other ones are still kind of stuck. They have like 113 pounds of force on there. They're really a son of a bitch to get apart. But so originally I made this one. The epoxy is the Home Depot professional grade. Seemed like it was held up, you know, it spun well and it didn't have a problem until I hit it with a friggin' hammer and the force. I didn't hit the epoxy itself, I was hitting the bushing on it. But originally I wanted that to be an aluminum bushing inside of, it starts as a trailer nut. It's what are these? 1.25" diameter shanks. These are for trailer balls, like a bigger ball, like 2 5/16 diameter or something like that, I think. So the outside diameter of the nut is, I think it's like 1 7/8 or something, close to that. Marked on 60 degrees, so it worked pretty good. But originally I wanted to put an aluminum bushing in here to adapt down to my shaft size, and that's when I talked to the machine shop, and they told me $200 to build the bushing to make that. And so now that I have the lathe, I started making the bushing and getting it working. Kind of a picture here of what's going on. This is the bushing here. The nut gets pushed on, how it already is there. These little relief cuts will be probably from the aluminum halfway into the steel, and I want them to look more like what's drawn on the right hand side there, like a dovetail. And what that is when the epoxy, the next epoxy coating that comes on, will be able to seep into there and hold in. And what I'm thinking next time is it won't be near as thick in epoxy, just a little thicker than the magnets, and then I'll probably use fiberglass automotive resin hardener style epoxy, or to do it in this time. And then on the final layer on both sides, and then around the outside perimeter, maybe a piece of carbon fiber for strength and looks. My other thing that I'd like to improve on is maybe having some type of filler in between these spaces before I epoxy it, so that I don't have these big epoxy centers. You can see how thick, you know, the magnets are 1 by 1. And the other thing I've noticed is that inside in the core, some of it's not even really dry yet. And I made this thing probably over a month ago, so it's had plenty of time. I don't know, I guess I pretty much poured most of it at one time, so I think maybe the key would be multiple thin layers. Not familiar with casting stuff into epoxy, but it held up really well until I smacked that sucker with a hammer and it couldn't take that force of going on the shaft. But so we've got the new bushing somewhat made. What we're gonna look, if you're looking down this way, on what is it, every 120 degrees, I'll have a set screw drilled and tapped into this bushing, and that's what'll physically hold it to the shaft. I still have to, I just got it center drilled. Need to bore that out. I have some more of this 3/4 stock, so thinking boring out something like this so that the shaft actually has a groove and it has to push on to that, and then that's where we'll set the set screws on. So we'll have to get that piece back in the lathe, learn how to do this center boring. The drill, I guess you drill a hole and then you got boring tools that you can bring it out more precisely. But I'm pretty impressed so far with how it looks. This is actually right off the lathe, no polishing. Actually what it did do when I friggin', where is that at? You should be able to see it. There it is. When I unchucked it, it fell off and hit the base of the lathe and dinged my pretty corner. So once we do some boring in that hole, we'll fix that. But otherwise, looks like a really nice piece of homemade whatever. Anyway, keep you guys posted on the progress. Need to build the new rotor, and then we'll get back to business. Magnets are on order. If anybody has any idea on how to get the epoxy off these magnets, I'd certainly love to salvage them. I just don't know of any chemicals. I can't think of anything that I could probably have around the household that would release that from these magnets. Any ideas? Let me know. This is Rawbush. I'm out here. Peace.